Hello and welcome to another weekly update. And if you've been following the blog posts I've been doing this week, you'll have noticed there is quite an appreciation for Microsoft Flow this week. And the reason for that is that there have been two new connectors for Flow which have come out recently, both into preview, and one is for Skype for Business and one is for Microsoft Teams. And that's led to a bunch of new functionality that you can do using, well, not just Microsoft Flow, because these are connectors, which means that you can use them in Power Apps and Logic apps as well as Microsoft Flow. So I go through a couple of different scenarios. I go through three different examples. The first one in the first blog post I did is around building an out-of-office reminder using Microsoft Flow and using Skype for Business. So the basic premise is every morning around about 9 o'clock, there's a flow that runs and it checks to see whether your out of office is set. And you can do that in Graph in Office 365. You can pull your mailbox and you can pull mail tips. So that will tell you whether or not your out of office is set and if you're sending automatic replies. If you are sending automatic replies, then it will pull the body of that automatic reply. And then again, using the 365 Graph, it will, or using 365 and Microsoft Graph, it will work out who your immediate line manager is, and it will send that person a short instant message just to say, you know, if it's first thing in the morning, just to say, hey, just to let you know, I'm not in today, I'm on annual leave, and then I also put in the body of the automatic reply. Because often those out of office automatic replies contain useful information about the date you're going to be back and who else to talk to in your absence and stuff like that. So that's all done in Microsoft Flow, and that's interesting because it's integration with Skype for Business that you can do, but you don't need to be a Skype for Business developer. There's a number of different things you can do with this connector. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was worth talking about. The other thing you can do with the Skype for Business connector is create a meeting. And so another blog post I did this week was around creating a Flow button to immediately create a new Skype for Business meeting and then just email me the meeting join details. Now, this is something you can do yourself in the Skype for Business client. It's not new functionality, but often if you're out and about, if you're on the road and you just have your mobile phone with you and you're just trying to juggle everything, it's actually quite useful to be able to quickly spin up a new meeting and get all the meeting details in an email that you can then distribute out quickly. And that was the premise of that flow. There's been a bit of to and fro on Twitter about compatibility. I'm still trying to work out exactly what the compatibility story is. I think if you're Skype for Business online completely, this will work fine. If you're on-premise entirely, this probably won't work. If you're somewhere in the middle, it might work. I think it mostly depends on where your Skype for Business where your Skype for Business account is homed. I think you also need to have your Exchange mailbox online as well in order for all this integration to work properly. And then finally, the other Microsoft Flow that I did a blog post about this week is around Microsoft Teams. And it's the same story, it's the same kind of integration, it's an out-of-office reminder, but in this case it goes to a specific team. There are a number of other things you can do with the Teams connector for Flow. You can do things like list channels and list teams, and you can post into channels, and you can create new channels within a team as well. You can do all of that in Flow, which means you can do it in response to things. There's some interesting things you could do with approval processes and approval flows as well around creation that I might look at next week or in the future if I get a chance. So that's potentially interesting. But I thought it was good. I think Flow is a really nice way to just create little kind of utility applications that get stuff done. It's way less effort than spinning up an application to run it on a schedule, finding somewhere to run it. It's nice, it kind of just runs in the cloud, it's always there. You don't need to be a programmer to make it work. There's big kind of building blocks of functionality that you join together. It's very discoverable and it works with lots of things. So big fan of Flow, and it's great to see these two connectors coming into Flow. The other blog post I did this week was quite a long one and quite a detailed one, and it's around the new API and the new kind of programmer functionality that is coming from Microsoft Teams and was talked about at Ignite. And I've only really just had time to kind of sit down and go through the session content properly and put together the blog post. But the title of the blog post is "Here's what we know so far about the UCMA-style API for Microsoft Teams." And the reason I called it the UCMA-style API is that at the moment there isn't really an API in Teams to do the kind of workflows, the kind of programmatic workflows that you could do today for Skype for Business in UCMA. So back-end call control, routing, call routing scenarios, IVRs, call transfers, blind transfer, call park, those kind of things you can't do today. Media manipulation you can't do today. And so at the moment, a lot of the Teams developer functionality and capability is focused on the front end and about bringing information into Teams and automating process and business flow. There's less about the back-end manipulation. Now that's changing. There is this new functionality coming. It was talked about, like I say, it was talked about at Ignite. It doesn't really have a proper name. It's kind of being referred to as Programmable Voice and Video Platform. So in the blog post, I've shortened it to PVVP. I'll keep calling it PVVP because it sort of makes sense until it's got a proper name. But essentially, there's four kind of key elements to this. There's four kind of things that this platform will deliver on. The first is call control. So all those kind of call capabilities around manipulation of call flows and changing where things go. Media, so we can dig into that in a minute, but media capabilities, and actually more media capabilities are planned than the things you can do in UCMA today, so that's interesting. From the start, the design is such that it should work across networks, so it should work across Teams, it should work across Skype for Business, and that's a good compatibility story that you'll be able to write application. Again, I should counter and say this is not all written down. This is kind of what we heard at Ignite, and you can go and listen to the sessions and infer your own judgments from it. What I took away from it is that it sounds like you'll be able to write applications and they will run across both platforms equally, which is good. And then the fourth and final pillar is around cognitive services. So I've talked about this here before, the way Microsoft are moving from unified communications to intelligent communications. A key part of that is bringing in some of the artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff that is part of cognitive services and bringing that into communication workloads. So things like transcription, translation, and kind of advanced processing of conversations. So those are the things that are planned. And the really interesting thing that I was not expecting them to say is that this is all being built on something that's available today that we don't really use. And that's the real-time media capabilities in Skype Consumer. So within Skype Consumer, you can do real-time audio manipulation and you can do real-time video manipulation. And it seemed pretty powerful, and I've never really dug into it because Skype Consumer sits slightly outside of it's not really in the Skype for Business space. You know, for a long time, it wasn't even a Microsoft product. And then it was a Microsoft product, and since then it's kind of quietly grown in capability, certainly on the back end, in ways that I don't think anyone was really expecting. So it's interesting to see that actually it looks like this new platform isn't new at all. It's being built out of the capabilities that are in Skype today, and that's really interesting because we know already that Teams and Skype for Business Online, all this stuff is moving to this new Skype backend they keep talking about, and that's the same backend that Skype Consumer is built on. So in a way, it makes total sense that the manipulation, the developer API platform is the same. But that's really good because it means we can look at that and we know what's coming, so we can get up to speed with it, we can work out how it works. we can get comfortable with it, and then it's no surprises and no sharp edges when it comes to Teams. So it's definitely worth looking through the blog post, because I go into some detail about what that platform can do and the different types of media. There's a lot of emphasis and effort gone into how possible it's going to be for developers to manipulate media. So much so it's broken down into two types of media, the way you can change media. So there's remote media capabilities and local media capabilities. Really quickly, remote media capabilities are the stuff you can do on the server. So it's things that don't require you to get your hands dirty with the actual media bits itself. So that would be things like inserting voice prompts, recognizing DTMF tones, server-side recording, stuff like that. But sometimes you do want to kind of get your hands dirty. You do want to start manipulating the bits and bytes. Maybe you want to overlay watermarks across the video. Maybe you want to take the audio and transcribe it. Maybe you want to take the video and do real-time video image manipulation and analysis with it. And so there is the functionality to do local media capability. So all that is supported as well. And in fact, what's really interesting is because it's being built on something that's already there, we're getting some really quite detailed tidbits of information about what it's going to be able to do. So for instance, as a developer, you'll be able to receive 50 frames per second of audio, 30 frames per second of video for your processing. So that's a good level of detail that we can plan on and we can plan solutions for today. The other kind of takeaway from that session is that the delivery mechanism for this new platform is going to be Graph. And that shouldn't really be a surprise, because that's been a common feature from Ignite, and even before Ignite really, that Graph is the new place to go to get all this stuff. Graph is the new transport mechanism for 365 information and workloads for everybody. So that includes this new stuff. So go read the blog post if that's interesting. There's some links there as well. Around the 2 sessions at Ignite I watched, and there's also links out to GitHub samples and write-ups for doing those things in Skype Consumer if you want to have a play and a look around today. That's kind of definitely worth doing. The other thing I just wanted to call out quickly, in case you were living under a rock this week, Microsoft Teams published their roadmap through to the end of 2018. You can go and look at it. I didn't write a blog post about it because literally everybody else in the community did, and I didn't really have anything to add. It's interesting that this platform stuff that I've just talked about, this programmable voice and video, actually didn't show up in that roadmap at all. Now there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that the roadmap is it's geared towards the delivery of Skype for Business workload, transitioning Skype for Business workloads into Microsoft Teams. So it might be that the team thought that this programmable platform wasn't a good fit for that, and it didn't make sense to include it in the roadmap. That's one way of analysing it. The other just might be that it might not be ready in 2018 and it's something that's coming later. We don't know, we can't say. So watch and wait on that one. But if you want to know what is coming to Microsoft Teams in the next 12 months, then go and check out the roadmap. It goes into a good level of detail. There's a definite focus on filling in the gaps that are preventing people from migrating over from Skype for Business Online to Teams. So that's really good to see, because it shows Microsoft understand, and they're taking steps to kind of fill in these gaps and build out Microsoft Teams with capabilities. So that's good as well. So go and check that out. And then finally, just a reminder: Future Decoded is next week. Next Tuesday and Wednesday in London. It's free to attend. It's a Microsoft event. It's free to attend, but you do need to register. I'm going to be speaking there on the second day. I'm going to be talking about cognitive services. There's a blog post about it last week. I talked about it last week. So come and see that if you're interested. And if you're going to be at the event, ping me on Twitter, say hello. We can talk about this stuff. And I expect you'll see several blog posts from me next week around the stuff that was talked about at Future Decoded, because it's always a good chance to kind of get a good overview of where Microsoft are going and what their future plans are thinking. All the cool stuff basically that's not quite ready, they'll talk about and show. It's all about future of working and modern working. So some good, exciting stuff to look at and talk about. So expect some blog posts from that. And I think that's everything. So 15 minutes, so definitely time to stop. Have a good weekend and speak to you next week.